Good morning. It is a cold, blustery morning this morning. I'm about to go out and get the pigs and the chickens and everybody fed and then turn the pigs loose in the garden. Today we're going to talk about a couple of things. We're going to talk about how fresh your eggs are and what pigs can eat. Just coming to the shop to get out of the wind, but speaking of pigs and what they can eat, I just had a really great breakfast. Matthew chapter 4 verse 4 says, "Man shall not live by bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God." Well, it might be a bit blasphemous, but Jesus never tasted my wife's homemade bread, and I could eat that stuff all day, every day. I tell you, it's delicious. She made, I think, 3 or 4 loaves of bread, and she's like, "Oh, it's not going to last for... I'm going to have to freeze some of this stuff." Don't worry about it, honey. I'll take care of it. It won't go bad. Anyways, why I wanted to talk about what pigs eat. Yesterday's video, I mentioned that we're going to turn the pigs loose in the other half of the garden, and we just harvested all the potatoes out of there yesterday. There's a few little ones and some roots and stuff that are left in the soil. Anytime you post a video on YouTube and somebody sees it, they look at the picture, you know, the thumbnail, and then they make a judgment call based on the title, and it can get a little bit confusing. So a couple of folks have commented, "Well, I don't think pigs are supposed to eat potatoes." Well, okay, let's look at the facts. So first things first, can pigs eat potatoes? Yes, actually they can. And a lot of producers do actually feed potatoes to pigs. The concern is that pigs are high in starch, and so starch is not as easily digestible by pigs as it would be in, say, cattle or sheep or even humans, for instance. Now, if you're to cook those potatoes, that starch then becomes accessible and digestible by the pigs. But you should never feed your pigs more than 20 to 25% of their diet in potatoes, simply because the high starch content, low protein content, it's really not what you're looking for in your pigs, right? You don't want to build fat. You want to build meat, right? So the other concern is, well, are potatoes toxic to pigs? Well, I guess why would you be feeding the potatoes to the average, small farmer? Why would you be feeding the potatoes to the pigs? They're probably your waste potatoes. They're probably the ones that are a little bit green. Maybe they've been at the surface, or you've caught them at the fork and they're not good. So let's take a look at one of our... So this is a potato I dug out of the garden yesterday. Pretty good size. Actually, this is about the average size. And you'll see there's no green on the potato. This potato spent its entire life underneath the soil, away from the sunlight. And that's what's important. So when your potatoes aren't held up properly and the potato starts to poke up through the soil, sunlight will create solanine. Solanine is toxic to... Well, it's not really toxic to pigs. It has a toxic effect to pigs in the sense that what it does is it prevents the pig from digesting its food properly. It has an effect on the intestine of the pig, and it can also destroy critical enzymes in the pig's digestive system. So you'll have reduced gains, and eventually, the pig can starve to death, right? So if you are going to feed a pig any potatoes, make sure it's cooked and make sure it has no green spots on it. Now, a potato that has a green spot on it can be cut off, can be cooked, and can be successfully fed to the pig. Just remember to keep it below that 20 to 25% of its daily diet. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about was how fresh are your eggs. Now, this can be a bit tricky when you're in the grocery store trying to decipher how fresh your eggs are, but what the law says is that your eggs have to be, they have to get to the grocery store within 30 days of being laid. Then the grocery store has another 30 days to sell those eggs. And then you have, on top of that, 15 more days within which to eat those eggs. So typically from laying the egg until eating the egg could be as much as 75 days. How do you tell how old your eggs are? Well, an egg carton will have a set of numbers on the top. So you'll see on the side there, it's got the date, and this one's from 2018. This is just an old egg carton. We use all recycled egg cartons for our eggs. But you'll see there's a code below it there. And what the code is a unique identifier that identifies generally the producer and the date that the eggs were collected. Now, this can be a little bit hard to decipher because it's not really in any clear fashion. But you can look at the date up above and you could say, okay, well, the egg was laid within 30 days of this date before it got to the grocery store, or before it got to the carton at least. So large commercial producers will actually keep a certain amount of stock in flux. Now, that's just based on market supply and demand, and they've just got a certain amount sitting in a fridge somewhere, and then as the supply increases they can use that up, and then when the supply wanes, they've got storage room for more eggs. And that's a perfectly normal practice. But you'll see when you buy grocery store eggs, actually a good example of this is where if you want to boil an egg, right? You boil an egg from the grocery store versus you boil an egg from the farm. And what is the big difference there? Well, so a farm fresh egg is going to peel more like a pineapple than an orange, in a sense that the shell doesn't come off very well of an actually, you know, a truly farm fresh egg. It's not there. Whereas a store-bought egg, they've sat for multiple days, and what happens is that the eggshell is porous, right? So air can get in through that membrane, and then you get kind of a microannulus in there. And then when you boil your egg, obviously that it's able to separate nice. So you can't accomplish this with farm fresh eggs. You just have to reconcile yourself that you're going to leave them sit for, you know, a couple of weeks and let that air get into the eggshell itself. So now how do you tell when you go to the grocery store and you buy eggs, how do you tell that you're actually getting farm fresh eggs? Because that's a lot of the packaging will say directly on it, farm fresh eggs. Well, what does farm fresh really mean? Well, an easy test to tell is the float test. So if you take an egg, put it in a glass of water, and if it sinks to the bottom and it stays sunk at the bottom, it's a fresh egg. If you put it in there, it sinks to the bottom, and then slowly starts to rise up, it's not as fresh. Still fine, but not as fresh. If you put it in a glass of water and it floats at the top, don't eat that egg. It's not fresh at all. In fact, you should probably just get turfed. Now, what's happening here is the air that I mentioned earlier, it gets through the eggshell inside the membrane. That's what's causing that egg to float. And the longer it's sat out, the more air can get in, and the egg whites are drying up, and it's just not a good egg.
Some cheese. Cheese.
So now I'm just here in the tack shed. I'm just getting the electric poultry ready. Okay, I have it for real now this time. Note to self, don't hang it up on the hook on the wall. It's not a good place. Anyways, I'm gonna run this netting out to the garden, and we're gonna put it up and let the pigs in the other half of the garden now. Come on, Wilbur. You can do it, buddy.
Why are you in my house? Get out. Come on. Get out. Get out.
Well, we got the pigs all moved over, and they're as happy as can be in the that side of the garden now. Boy, is it ever windy out there. It's probably not the windiest day of the year, but it's right up there. And I think, well, if you live between Valley View and Dawson Creek, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's about 3 days a year where you don't like say out loud, like, I wish that wind would bugger right off. But anyways, yeah, it's hard to get anything done today, but I'm in the chicken house right now, and we're just cleaning out some of these nesting boxes. I'm gonna build some kind of a barrier here that I can put up in the afternoon to stop the chickens from going and roosting in there, because you get boxes like this one where they just go in there and poop like crazy, and then the other chickens don't want to go lay eggs in there because it's full of poop. And those that do lay eggs in there, while the eggs are all dirty and it requires a lot of washing, it becomes a little bit labor intensive. So I got some 1x4 in here that I just cut to 90 inches, which is the length of the nesting box. And you can see I got this one laid down here. The theory is just to basically put it up kind of this halfway point and just bar access to the chickens overnight. And then in the morning when they come out to do chores, just kick that open again so they can come in and lay their eggs. And we'll give it a try for tonight. It'll only take me 2 minutes to put this together. And hopefully we have a poop-free nesting box tomorrow. Well, there you have it. That's our poop-free nesting box. So I'll leave this up for tonight. Tomorrow morning when I come to do chores, I'll just pop that board off and they can hop right in there. In the evening when I go out and feed the pigs, I'll just make sure nobody's nesting in there, throw that board back up. Hey presto, poop-free nesting boxes. So you might have the question, well, what if one of our chickens wants to lay an egg outside of normal business hours, so that's fine. We also have an alternate nesting box for after hour service. They can call the 1-800 number and just use this one right here. But this is the one they're filling up with poop every single day, and it's just becoming a gong show. So enough of that. I think we've solved this problem. It's now like 8:30 at night, I think. I was hoping I could tell you that the wind has died down, but it hasn't. That's okay. I'm gonna run these carrots into the fridge in the shop here, feed the dogs, and then I'm gonna go inside and make a cup of tea. So I hope you have a fantastic evening. We'll see you tomorrow.